In the last part, we saw how the English, the Battle of Plassey, killed the Nawab of Bengal, Siraj-ud-Dawla. So from 1757, after Battle of Plassey, they started to attain more territories for trading. So this continued until 1857. One more thing we must know is the British East India Company didn't directly attack any state or a kingdom. Instead, what they did was they used political, economic and diplomatic methods to interfere and take control over a kingdom. So earlier we saw, even in Siraj-ud-Dawla's issue, what they did was they tried to replace Mir Jafar. So because of this, Siraj-ud-Dawla got angry and he gave a warning. Then he takes control of Calcutta fort. So this started the war. So like this, indirectly they'll try to provoke the kingdoms. So after Battle of Buxar in 1764, where even the Mughal Emperor Shah Alam was even defeated. So after this, what happened? The company installs a resident in every Indian state it was having relationship with. So the work of these residents was to serve the political and commercial interest of the company. So they were agents. So through the resident, the company interfered in the internal matters of the kingdoms. So by interfering, their aim was to create some change inside the kingdoms. For example, they will try to decide who will be the next successor or the king or the ruler in a kingdom, and also who will be appointed in administrative posts. For example, in finance or even military posts, so that the East India Company can get favorable services. So like that, they tried to interfere in the internal affairs. And one more method they used was subsidiary alliance, about which we'll see next. So according to this subsidiary alliance, the Indian rulers should not have their own independent armies. So this alliance is entered through actually the methods of political, economic and diplomatic ways, about which we saw earlier. So by that, the rulers were compelled or sometimes made to form an alliance. So if they were not allowed to have their own armies, the company will be protecting them. So that is the deal of this alliance. And for this maintenance of forces by the company to protect the kingdom, the ruler has to give a payment. So we must have heard about this mamul, where the shopkeepers have to pay protection money to the rowdies or goons. So like that, the rulers have to pay a payment to the company for protection. And if they fail to make the payment, then a part of that territory, the kingdom, will be taken as penalty. An example will be when Richard Wellesley was the Governor General, the Nawab of Awadh has to give almost half his territory as penalty in 1801. And earlier, Hyderabad was the first to enter into alliance, and even the stage came when the Nizam had to cede his territories to the British East India Company as penalty. There were times when the company couldn't control, or sometimes when they had political or economic threats, that is, sometimes they couldn't do the trade properly. At the same time, they couldn't manage diplomatically. That time, they indulged in direct military attack. So one such example is Mysore. Mysore was ruled by two powerful kings, Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan. So Hyder Ali ruled from 1761 to 1782 and Tipu Sultan ruled from 1782 to 1799. One thing was common between both. Both were powerful and known for their braveness and valor. At the same time, both martyred in the war field, defending their country, the kingdom. The Mysore state that time controlled the Malabar coast trade. So in the present day, it's the coast of Karnataka and Kerala. So here only the company purchased pepper and cardamom, and they exported from here to their country, England, and also the European area. What happens in 1785, Tipu Sultan stops the export of sandalwood, pepper, cardamom through his country's ports, that is Mangalore and Mahe. And at the same time, he stops the local merchants from trading or selling to the English company. He also had close relationship with the French people, and you must know that the French were the enemies of the British people. So this also irks the English East India Company. At the same time, with the help of the French people, he updates or modernizes his army. So using latest weapons and artilleries, buying from the French people. So this also makes the British people angry. So what they think is, they think that Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan are ambitious. That is, they are having a big ambition and they are very arrogant, and they are also dangerous. That is, they can't be controlled and they are a threat to the British people. So what the company thinks is Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan must be controlled and crushed. That is, they must be destroyed. So because of this thought of the British people, 4 wars were fought. And this war was called Anglo-Mysore War. So the first happened in 1767 and it ended in 1769. And in this war, Hyder Ali became victorious. He wins the war. In 1780 to 84, it was a tough war. So in the initial stages, Tipu Sultan and sometimes even Hyder Ali, both at various places, they won the war. But in 1782, Hyder Ali was killed during the battle, and after the war, Treaty of Mangalore was signed. Then in 1790 to 92, the next war takes place, and in this war, the company became victorious, and the Treaty of Seringapatanam, which is the English version of Srirangapatnam, we will call our version Srirangapatnam. So the Treaty of Srirangapatnam was signed, and two sons of Tipu Sultan were taken hostage by the British people, and in 1799, which was the last and the fourth Anglo-Mysore war, in that war Tipu Sultan was killed while defending his capital Srirangapatnam, and after his death the British brings in Wadayar family to rule Mysore, who were earlier ruling before Hyder Ali. Subsidiary alliance was put or imposed to the Wadayars in Mysore. So during this time, simultaneously the British East India Company, they tried to control and destroy the Marathas also. So after the Marathas got defeated in the Third Battle of Panipat in 1761, when they fought against the Durrani Empire led by Ahmad Shah Abdali, the dream of controlling Delhi was brought down. The Maratha Empire was divided into states, and each state was headed by a chief called Sardar. These Sardars were from different dynasties, different princely families, namely Scindia, Holkar, Gaikwad and Bhonsle. These names you must have heard from different personalities in India even now. So these chiefs together ruled under the Peshwa as a confederacy, similar to how the United States started as a confederacy. So each state ruled independently. At the same time, they were ultimately under the control of the Peshwa, who was the principal minister or prime minister of the Maratha Empire. The Maratha Empire was started by Chhatrapati Shivaji Bhonsle. He belonged to the Bhonsle family, and step by step the Peshwa took ultimate control, who came from a Brahmin lineage. They headed the military and administrative part, and they ruled from Pune and not from Bombay. They ruled from Pune. And Mahatji Scindia and Nana Fadnis or Fadnavis, they were two famous Maratha soldiers who were also good statesmen or politicians during this period. The English weakened the Marathas step by step. The first war, which is called the Anglo-Maratha War, took place from 1775 to 1782, and in the end there were no single victorious side, but it ended with the Treaty of Salbai, which was brokered by Mahatji Scindia from the Maratha side. Then the second Anglo-Maratha war took place between 1803 and 1805, and here what happened, in certain areas the Marathas had the upper hand. At the same time, in many places the British had the upper hand, and they came victorious ultimately, and they gained from the Marathas Orissa and also north of river Yamuna, which includes Agra and Delhi. Then the third Anglo-Maratha war took place between 1817 and 1819, which saw the ultimate defeat of the Marathas. The English became victorious, and they captured the Peshwa, and the Peshwa seat was removed, and the Peshwa was sent to Bithur, a place near Kanpur, with a pension. Now the company had complete control over regions to the south of the Vindhya region, which forms the southern India. So the next stage in British annexation policy is the Paramountcy. So this happened under Lord Hastings, who was the Governor General from 1813 to 1823. But this is not the Warren Hastings. This is Marquess of Hastings, who is by the name Francis Rawdon Hastings. So this paramountcy means the ultimate authority or the supreme. So the company claimed that they are the ultimate authority of the Indian subcontinent. So to have this thought and interest, what they did was they gave this as an excuse to annex or threaten to annex, to control an Indian kingdom. So they used this policy to expand and control or annex more kingdoms in India. But they did have challenges and opposition from the Indian kingdoms. The best example we can see is from Rani Chennamma of Kittur, which is in Karnataka today. So her husband died and later her son died. So she had to adopt a son and made him the king, but the British didn't accept and they took control of her country and they installed a collector, but she resisted it and he, along with some troops, tried to take control of the fort of Rani Chennamma. So there the war broke out. So several times Rani Chennamma fought bravely and she was victorious in the beginning, but finally she was arrested in 1824 and was sent to prison where she died in 1829. Her close associate, a person from a poor family, Sangoli Rayana, who was from Sangoli in Kittur, so he continued Rani's resistance and he had the support of the people also. Even Rani Chennamma had the support of the people and even he had the support of the people after her, and he destroyed many British camps and also their documents or records, but he was finally caught and hanged under a banyan tree by the British in 1830. And then in the late 1830s, the British East India Company, they feared the Russians. They thought the Russian will cross Asia and enter India through the northwest region. So they wanted to control the northwest area and secure it so that the Russians can't enter. So for this they fought with the Afghans. So this was the first Afghan war or the Anglo-Afghan war, which took place between 1838 and 1842. But the company could not establish a direct rule. It was an indirect rule. Next, they took over Sindh region in 1843, and after that their eye was towards Punjab, which was under Maharaja Ranjit Singh, who was a brave ruler. The British couldn't take control of Punjab, but after the death of Maharaja Ranjit Singh in 1839, two wars took place between the English and the Sikhs, which was called Anglo-Sikh War, and finally in 1849 Punjab was annexed. So the final stage of the annexation policy of the British occurred during the Governor-Generalship of Lord Dalhousie, who was the Governor-General from 1848 to 1856. So he gave the policy Doctrine of Lapse. So under this policy, if an Indian ruler dies without a male heir, that is a son, if a king doesn't have a son, then immediately his kingdom would go to the British East India Company. That is, it would lapse. So here lapse means transferred from one to the other, and the other is the East India Company. So using this policy, they annexed kingdoms such as Satara in 1848 and Sambalpur in 1850, Udaipur in 1852, Nagpur in 1853, and also Jhansi in 1854. And finally, in 1856, Awadh was also annexed by the company, and the reason they gave to annex Awadh cannot be accepted if you just have a look at what they said. They said they were obliged by duty to free the people of Awadh from the misgovernment of the Nawab. They said the Nawab was not governing properly, so it's a duty to free the people from the Nawab. So that was a humiliating process. They humiliated the Nawab, they ill-treated the Nawab and took him off the throne. So this angered even the people of Awadh, that they took part in the Great Revolt or the first independence of a country in 1857. So until now, we saw how the British handled politically and also how they used their military to control us. In the next video, we'll see how they administered, how their administration was. Continue to register your comments. Thanks for watching and supporting my channel.